Call the meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the October 19th, 2021 Post Falls City Council meeting. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Rhiannon is filling in for Shannon tonight. Would you please note the council members are all present with the exceptions of Councillor Thorson and Councillor Borders, both of whom are excused tonight. Under ceremonies, announcements, appointments, come by City Hall next Friday, October 29th from 2 to 4:30 p.m. for drive-through trick-or-treating. Stay in your car as you drive by different stations and collect your treats. Costumes and card decorating is encouraged. Visit the city's website for more information and a route map. And residential fall cleanup is next Saturday, October 30th. Pickup will be 1 day citywide. Items must be placed at the streets by 6 a.m. All items are to be bagged, bundled, or in a garbage cart. Items must not exceed 4 feet in length and 4 feet in width. If you have any questions, contact Post Falls Sanitation, 208-457-1820. And we do need an amendment to the agenda tonight to add an executive session, correct?
That's correct.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Do we need to identify why it's being added?
This item came up after the agenda was posted, and so we've added it to the agenda, but because it was after 48 hours before the meeting, we have to make a motion to officially amend the agenda.
Perfect. Any questions on that? Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wilhelm. Aye. Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Are there any declarations of conflict or ex parte contacts or site visits tonight? I gotta tell you, it's strange to look down and only see 4 people up here. It just seems like we are definitely missing. With that, Shelley, would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the September 13th, 2021 Special City Council meeting. Item B is minutes from October 5th, 2021 City Council meeting. Item C is payable September 28th through October 11th, 2021. Item D is cash and investments for September. Item E is Nicholson Commercial Center First Edition Master Development Agreement. Item F is Lassen Annexation Agreement. Item G is Pasture View Estates Subdivision Master Development Agreement. Item H is Smock Zone Change Reasoned Decision. Item I is Tullamore 9th Edition Zone Change Reasoned Decision. Item J is Gondo Annexation Reasoned Decision. Item K is Frontage Improvement Waiver Request for 108 East 15th Avenue. Item L is Jacqueline Riverbend Annexation Agreement, and item M is Ziply Fiber Internet Contract.
Are there any questions on the consent calendar tonight? Entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wilhelm. Aye. Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item up tonight is public hearings, and for the first time in a long time, we have none, followed by unfinished business, returning ordinances and resolutions, and we have a slew of them. The first is parking recommendations for Camellan Park. Mr. Fair.
Okay, what am I doing wrong here?
Are there any 6-year-olds in the audience?
Yeah.
Usually John Manley
Oh.
helps, but I don't think he's here.
Well, that's what we need. We need a kid.
Okay, there. Thank God there's 6-year-olds in the audience. My wife has asked me to grow up from time to time, but I don't think I even hit the 6-year-old yet. So, Mayor and Council, Dave Fair, Park and Rec Director. Back in July, the council directed this topic to go back to the Park and Rec Commission for them to study and come back with a recommendation. Tonight is that recommendation. After they looked at it, the Park and Rec Commission came up with essentially 3 things that they wanted that were changes. They wanted to provide one free resident car pass per household. That will be administered through the Park and Rec Commission, just like we do our season passes right now. We're hooked into the Dash system, which is into the GIS, which allows us to definitively say that they're within the city boundaries. With that, when they go into the ticket booth to provide it, they'll have that pass, and it can be moved from family member to family member, but they'll have to show their driver's license, which will need to show the Post Falls residency. So we felt that was the easiest way to put that through. They would like to start charging parking from Memorial Day to Labor Day per the ordinance, regardless of whether the Avista Dam is closed or not. They recognize that people are using the park at that point. And then they'd like to see us start charging a launch fee, which would include the boat parking. So getting away from a parking charge for boats and going to a launch fee. The fees that they recommended were a daily car parking fee for a resident. So that's somebody who chose not to get the free pass, or for whatever reason, that would be $6. That would also, just so you understand how we're going to identify a resident, is simply off of the driver's license once again. So there are some people that are actually in the county that or even Hauser Lake that have a Post Falls address. It's about probably 4,000 households. We just felt that that was easiest. We do not have the computer or internet capabilities down at the ticket booth to try and figure out who's truly a resident. Non-residents would be $10. RVs, we do get some of those. It'd be a resident of 15, non-resident of 30. Once again, not a lot, but wanted to make sure that was covered. The boat launch fee would be a $15 fee for resident, $30 for a non-resident, and parking would be free for the boat launch with space available. So if there's no space, and you launch and then park outside, it's still that price of $15 or $30. The daily commercial bus fee of $50. Season passes, cars only. For somebody who wanted to have more than one season pass, they get the free one, and if they want another one, it'd be $20. If they lost their pass, we have no way to tell that, so it'd be a $20 fee if they wanted to replace it. Non-resident would be $50, and then the resident buses would be $150. So,
Question, Dave.
yes, sir.
So you're going to allow one resident pass free for the year
Correct, per household.
per household. Do they get a break on boat launch? So if a resident is launching a boat, is it a daily fee on that?
It's a daily fee on that. And the Park and Rec Commission kind of went around and around. So what we did is we had a focus group first. The group met, Park and Rec Commission. They kind of set some parameters, and then they had a focus group. So we had 3 members that gave input on that. They came up with kind of a framework. It went back to the Park and Rec Commission, and then they worked from there again. And there's a lot of talk on that, and it finally looked at it as being a specialty, just like we run classes, you rent a ball field, anything like that. It's different than just going in to use the park, go to the, whether it's climbing the trails, whether it's using the beach or whatever, so.
Steve?
So Dave, if you launch your boat now, you're not paying a launch fee, but
Correct.
you're paying a parking fee.
Correct.
So what is the parking fee currently?
And I did copy that down because I figured I would be asked that. I want to say it is, excuse me. Recommendation.
I think it's $10.
Right now, the boat is $8.
So it's $8.
And one of the things they discussed was to take some of the sting off of having a launch fee, is to have that launch money go into maybe a dedicated fund that would be set aside for improvement of the launch. The launch was built in '81. It's old. It needs some work. We're going to have to build up some reserves to fix it. We can go after some with money. There's been some changes at the state level that will provide more, but it would be a way to do that. But we recognize that it's a change. I can tell you that they had higher fees to begin with, but as they started really looking at it with the parking and everything else, it didn't seem to pencil out that it was. So,
Steve, any more?
Well, as far as what you're saying on the launch fees, I would agree with them there that I would like to see the launch fees go into a dedicated fund for repairs directly back to the launch, so it's not lost in some other category, because basically if something happens to that boat launch and you have a washout underneath, that's something you have to repair immediately. So if you had a fund to do that, I would wholeheartedly agree with them on that, so.
Good, thanks. Joe?
I don't have a boat, so I don't know this, but what are other boat launch locations charging? 3rd Street, Coeur d'Alene, Higgins Point, et cetera.
Coeur d'Alene, $10. Hayden is, I think, $10 also. Coeur d'Alene also charges parking.
Yeah.
So by the time you get the boat launch and the parking, we're about,
You're probably, it's a little bit higher, so we might be just a tad lower for the resident, but for the non-resident, we would be higher.
okay.
Yeah.
Question on the process. So if I've got a pass, got my pass, I go through the gate or go through the booth, I just show them my pass. Do I have to show them my driver's license
Yes.
too? Driver's license and pass. Is this going to cause major problems at the booth, do you think? I mean, I don't know what it's like on a Saturday morning on.
The first few good weekends, it might slow it down a little bit, but we felt that we could go fairly quick. It's about as quick as, if it's both shown there, getting people trained, that's going to be the big thing, and we'll try to educate them. When they get their pass, we'll have the corrections, if you will, that say, here's what you have to do, so they're ready to go. The reality is, if it does, we may have to rethink it, and we'll let you guys know what we're doing to try and adjust it. Or we'll have the PD out there and they'll just be directing traffic all Saturday. So we're trying to make this as smooth as possible. We think it will go fairly quickly.
So even though they've got a free pass, they still have to verify their residency?
Yeah. The idea was, okay, I go get it, and then it goes to somebody who is in Spokane or whatever. That's the hard part. We know that they get passed around. We know they will get passed around, but we figure at least if it shows a Post Falls resident. There was the discussion, what happens if they've just moved here from out of state? Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think they have 30 days to get their license corrected. So this might be that connection. Understand there's going to be a few people that, based on the current season passes we do right now, they do not want us to know where they live. Then they're a non-resident. They don't get that discount. So.
One second. Lynn?
I would just like to thank you, Dave, and thank you to the Parks Commission as well, because I have felt like this for a long time, that the residents should not have to pay to park there. So I appreciate you going through this exercise very much. Thank you.
It made us think a little bit, and it wasn't a bad exercise, and really looking at adding a launch fee versus the parking for that made sense.
Steve?
Just two quick questions,
Yes,
Dave.
sir.
So what will your hours be of operation?
Right now, they usually open up on the weekends about 10.
Okay.
And what we usually do is we tag the boats that are already out there and catch them on the way back, but then they close about 8. We don't catch everybody, we know that. But that seems to be where the biggest time is.
Okay. And do you see any more issues when you have big events down there with the vendors coming in and the parking and?
Historically, the city hasn't charged for, let's say, the Post Falls Festival or the community picnic. There was some discussion. Park and Rec said, let's get this through and let's go back and visit that and see. That is, I can tell you that every vendor, what do you want to call it, every promoter who's looked at running events down there in the parks, that's one of the things they look at is charging for parking, because they recognize the money they can make, just like at the fair. But that we weren't ready to do that. That's one we got to go back in and look at.
Mr. Wilson, will an ordinance need to come back, or do we just need to approve this? What's
So we'll need to have a public hearing on the fee increase. Anything over 5% requires a hearing, and new fees also require a hearing. So the launch fee would be new, so we'd have to have a public hearing before we adopt these.
I'm sorry. Typo. We're not taking public comment, but if it's,
Okay.
It says daily commercial bus fee, $50. Season commercial resident bus pass, $150. Are the residents the only one that gets the bus pass, or the season?
That is what the Park and Rec Commission said. They weren't looking at having buses coming from outside the region getting,
so they'll be charged on a per day then?
yes.
Okay.
So it was, they just didn't feel that having a non-resident. Okay.
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to be rude, but we can't take comment from the, so please accept my comment as not being rude, but just trying to keep a proper format of the meeting. So we'll need a motion to move this,
Direct staff to bring this back for a public hearing.
So moved.
Second?
motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye, motion passes, thank you. Next item up, we've got, thanks, Dave. We've got several ordinances. First is North Place.
Move to place the ordinance North Place zone change on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second?
Motion second, further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passed. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for a change in zoning classification for the land described in Section 1 of this ordinance from single-family residential to residential mixed, providing for amendment of the official zoning map to reflect this change, providing that all prior zones applicable to lands described in Section 1 are hereby superseded, and providing an effective date.
Move to approve the ordinance North Place zone change to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next up is the ordinance Green Meadow zone change.
Move to place the ordinance Green Meadows zone change on its first and only reading while under suspension of the rules.
Second?
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, providing for change in zoning classification for the land described in Section 1 of this ordinance from medium-density multifamily residential to community commercial services, providing for amendment of the official zoning map to reflect this change, providing that all prior zones applicable to lands described in Section 1 are hereby superseded, and providing an effective date.
Move to approve the ordinance Green Meadows zone change to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second?
Motion second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next ordinance is the Lassen annexation.
Move to place the ordinance Lassen annexation on its first and only reading while under suspension of the rules.
Second?
Motion second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, annexing property consisting of approximately 5 acres in the east half of the southwest quarter of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 21, Township 51 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, providing for amendment to the official zoning map and providing for an effective date hereof.
Move to approve the ordinance Lassen annexation to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next ordinance, alarm system code update.
Move to place the ordinance alarm system code update on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye. Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, Kootenai County, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, amending Post Falls City Code 944.020, providing that remaining sections of the Post Falls City Code shall remain in effect, providing for severability, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Move to approve the ordinance alarm code system update, to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next ordinance is the juvenile code.
Move to place the ordinance juvenile code on its first and only reading while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, Kootenai County, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, repealing Municipal Code Chapter 9.28 and adopting a new Chapter 9.28 to regulate offenses committed by or against juveniles, including curfew violations, failing to pick up a juvenile, and running away, and providing that violations are an infraction punishable by a fine of $150, providing that remaining sections of Post Falls City Code shall remain in effect, providing for severability, providing for this ordinance to be in full force and effect from and after its passage, approval, and publication according to law.
Move to approve the ordinance juvenile code, to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion seconds. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next ordinance is the Urban Renewal Agency Commissioner terms.
Move to place the ordinance Urban Renewal Agency Commissioner terms on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion.
Looking at this, it looks like half of the title is missing, or a portion of the title is missing. Can we bring this back to you at the next meeting for adoption?
Sure.
Because we need to make sure we got the title
All right
right.
with everyone? Okay. So that'll be added to the next agenda?
Yeah, there's something's wonky here. I'm not sure what it is, so we'll fix it and bring it back.
Does she need to withdraw the motion?
We're good.
And the last ordinance then would be Jacqueline River Bend annexation.
Move to place the ordinance Jacqueline Riverbend annexation on its first and only reading by title only while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passed. Mr. Wilson.
An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, annexing property consisting of approximately 12 acres within a portion of Section 7, Township 50 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, Idaho, and a portion of Section 12, Township 50 North, Range 6 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, providing for amendment to the official zoning map and providing for an effective date hereof.
Move to approve the ordinance Jacqueline Riverbend annexation, to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wolf.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item up tonight is new business, and tonight we have none, followed by citizens' issue. And this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council regarding a city-related issue that is not on the agenda. Please come forward, give your name for the record, and we've got a timer in front.
There's nothing on the agenda, right?
A whole lot.
Quite a few
Okay.
ordinances.
All right. First, a question. Special
name,
use
please.
permit.
Name, please.
Oh, Howard Burns, Rocky Point Court, Post Falls. Special use permit. It's my understanding that you do not see them? Is that correct?
So special use permits are approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission, subject to appeal to the City Council.
But if they're not appealed, they don't see them?
That's correct.
Okay. Also, Mr. Seal gave in April of 2021, gave a State of the City address, and in that State of the City address, he commented that the newly permitted dwelling units for 2020 was 1,363, and 466 of those were single-family. When you look at the data that's on the website of permits, you cannot determine that, so he knows how to get that number. It would be nice, since I know that the staff likes to call single-family homes anything that can be owned, essentially, whether it's a 3,000-foot lot or a 6,500-square-foot R1 lot. It would be nice to know how many R1 6,500-square-foot lots are approved, and how many apartments, and how many duplexes and townhomes. And it would be nice if the city had that every quarter, because currently, the hearing last week for the special use permit, between, right on the Beck Road, there's over 1,100 apartments in one small section of this city. And on the other side, you have the Jacqueline thing you just approved, which would add quite a few more. That's a massive number of apartments that are going in just one section. We know they're being approved elsewhere. In fact, the staff report for the item that was taken off the agenda for the Plummer Forest Products recommended that the whole 60 acres be high-density residential. And the city can't support that. If we have a goal from Kootenai County, we're going to have 103,000 people in our overall city limits, and you put in that many apartments and that many dwelling units, we're going to exceed the 103,000 long before we get to the 2040 timeframe, because we've added all those people. Next, in the hearing, there was a very well-written letter at Planning Commission by a
Excuse me,
gentleman.
Mayor. If you're talking about a hearing that was held last week, that decision hasn't been rendered and it's still subject to appeal.
Doesn't have anything to do with the decision.
Excuse me, it's still subject to
I
appeal.
don't care. I'm going to talk about it.
It's
okay?
still subject-
I don't care.
Not if
I'm
you're-
going to talk about it. You can't tell me what to talk about.
Excuse
this
me,
has
sir.
to do with procedure. This has to do with procedure, not with the hearing.
Excuse
Mr.
me, sir,
Jacobson,
this is out of
whenever
order.
whenever you get a letter, you are kind enough to read it into the record. Every letter that comes in is stated at that hearing for everybody to hear. The Planning Commission totally ignored that letter. It was an extremely well-written letter. I'm not going to say what it said, but it should have been put in the record for everybody to hear.
Excuse me a sec.
This is completely out of bounds.
Why? Why is it out of bounds?
Excuse me, sir.
Excuse me.
I'm not going to
I'm
debate
I'm
with
I'm tired
you.
of him telling me what I can
I
say.
don't care if you're tired
Mr.
with it.
Burns.
We're adhering to the policy, the procedures.
This matter is still subject to appeal to the city council. If there are errors and it gets appealed.
Is it an error?
Until then, it's out of bounds. This is an ex parte communication outside of the record. It can't be brought to the city council at this point in time.
So if there's a concern, if it comes before the city council,
Yes,
bring the concern.
until then, this is a live matter still. It's not been finally resolved, finally decided. Until then, this is out of bounds.
So bring it back if it comes to the council. Please bring your concerns.
So I need to appeal it. That's what you're telling me.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Okay.
And again, we're not trying to be difficult, but there are procedures that we have to follow. So we rely on legal counsel to tell us what is and is not allowed.
Well, your legal counsel approves every zone change that ever comes by. I haven't seen a zone change that the staff and your legal counsel has said no to. Every single one is a yes.
Okay, so do you have anything further to add tonight?
Yes, I have one more thing. In that hearing, and this has to do with hypocrisy on the Planning Commission, because you had one Planning Commission member, who proceeded to say that commercial at a certain corner would never work. It would never fit there. It will never pencil out. Commercial will never work, even though it was on a collector and an arterial. That same commissioner in the North Place, which you just approved the ordinance on, voted for commercial in that project that was on a very minor street on Syringa and said, oh, all that commercial is going to be fine. So I think somebody needs to say what they believe and what they don't, not whatever gets the zone change approved. Last but not least, I have 3 seconds. They also talked about assessed value and impact fees as though that was something to benefit R3 because they paid a lot of impact fee. R3 pays a huge impact fee because they have a huge impact.
Thank you. I agree. Anybody else? Sir, come on up. Name for the record, please.
Okay. My name is Robert Shea, and I live at 1480 North Fordham Street, and I've lived there for 2 years. I've been a resident. What I'd like to address the council about tonight is cash outs by...
Mr. Shea, can I ask you to step over to the microphone a little
I'm
bit?
sorry.
I can't hear you very well.
All right. What I'd like to address is cash outs. Now you see the map I have up on the board there, and I have a copy for each council member and staff. So, and for council members who aren't here. So, as soon since it's not in color up on the board, this section of property is the Greens Ferry Grove Addition 1, and it is at 16th and Greens Ferry Road. So what has happened here is during my home purchase, I spoke with reps from Monogram Homes, their real estate company. Promises were made and not kept. Stories were told that were not factual. Now we are in a situation where a cash out has been granted by the city to Big Creek Land Development Company, and this cash out should never have been accepted because the portion that is on both sides of the sidewalk, it's hard to see it there, but there's a green strip next to the road, and on your color copies, there's a green strip next to our property line, which is the Greens Ferry Grove HOA. Those two sections have not been landscaped or irrigated, and those promises were made to us when we bought a house. But after we bought our homes, then the Big Creek Land Development went to the city and said, no, we'd like to cash out and let the city develop it at some later date. I approached the city said, well, we did accept that, and but there is nothing on the plan for the city for the next 10 years to widen that road or finish that road or do anything to that section of Greens Ferry Road. And I think that in providing a city, a beautiful city, we are requiring developers to put landscaping in, and then to give them a free pass on landscaping, not a free pass, but a cash out. So in this case, Big Creek paid the city in excess of $26,000 not to develop along Greens Ferry Road. Now, we understand that at some point in the future there will be additions or improvements made to that road. So we're not seeking that trees be planted there, because we would not want to see trees uprooted after 10 or 15 years. But the hydroseeding and irrigation do need to be put in on those two parts. When I addressed the city, they said, okay, the city is only responsible from the sidewalk to the road, and that the HOA would be responsible to put in the landscaping from the sidewalk to our fence, which is still city right-of-way. However, that would require us to pay down the line for something that the developer should have done before it was turned over, before it was signed off by the city. So the city needs to improve the process of sign-off so that somebody actually walks around that community to make sure that everything is done that needs to be done. In fact, the developer left us with about $200 worth of fence improvements that they didn't complete. So that's all I have right now, but I do think the city needs to address that pretty soon, and nobody else, no other development should have to face this kind of a situation.
Thank you, Mr. Shea. And for the record, I have visited with Mr. Shea 2 or 3 different times. I think Mr. Wolf has. And Mr. Seal, do you want, can we get a quick update from Mr. Seal on that, Mr. Wilson?
She has all the extra copies.
Thank you, sir. Well, I'm just going to have Mr. Seal give us a quick update.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Bob Seal, Community Development Director. Yeah, actually, I met with staff this morning regarding the process in which we collect cash outs for these types of improvements. As to, this strip in particular is kind of a unique one. when the developer had come in, the plan intended to retain some large, I believe, blue spruce trees that were between the sidewalk and the fence. So in this situation, the sidewalk is about 12 to 15 feet away from the fence at most points, making it much larger than typical because there was an intention to save some trees. So that did not happen. The trees came down at some point after the development was to that phase of actually doing, finishing everything out. So it does look as if the grassland seed, the dry grassland seed, was never put in, and no irrigation was put in either in this situation. And we're not sure exactly where that sidewalk will be going in the future. It is true that, you know, there is a number of years out before the frontage improvements are actually completed for this. And the homeowners or homeowners association does have kind of some options looking at that stretch of land between the sidewalk and the fence that goes along Greens Ferry. It doesn't, you know, it could be, you could do grass and irrigation that requires the HOA to continue to maintain it. They could do, because it's not a grassy swale, they could do gravel, they could do mulch, they could do something that, you know, is able to be easily maintained. They could also do, which is what we would have intended for the developer to do, is just hydroseed it so that it grows the dry grassland seed, so it doesn't have to be irrigated, doesn't have to be maintained. The homeowners themselves would be technically responsible for it if the HOA didn't maintain it, because it's part of their frontage onto Greens Ferry. But that always gets complicated as well when it's outside a fence line. But we did meet on this morning, and I intended to meet with Parks Department tomorrow, and I was going to give Mr. Shea a call this week as well to update him on what I found out.
Would you keep us posted after your meetings?
Yeah, absolutely. Will do.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I
I
ask a
have
question
a
on that?
comment.
Let's go to Linda first.
I actually did go and walk around that property with Mr. Shea a month or so ago, I guess. And I sent you those pictures, and I was actually wondering if you went out there and looked at that
I
property.
did. I walked it, and I paced it to, that's how I gathered the 12 to 15 feet away. So,
And I've been out and looked at it as well, so.
yeah.
Mr. Wolf.
So Bob, I guess my question on this is, you know, what Mr. Shea's bringing up, this may be unique, but we do this fairly routinely in terms of a cash out. Is there anything like in between, like where we're saying, no, we can't put in curbs, we don't want to put in trees yet, but could we have had the developer at least put in irrigation and grass so that it's going to be nice looking for the next 10 or 15 years before that ever gets completely finished?
Short answer is yes. So, and that's one of the things that we talked about today, was trying to establish a policy on which to follow, kind of looking at it as probably anything that's going to exceed 3 years. You know, if it's within the next 3 years, means we are actively planning for it, we're actually actively preparing to design and go out for it. So anything beyond that, we're basically going to be requesting of the developers a more finished product of some form, whether that involves irrigation or whether that involves, you know, mulching or whatever it looks like, whatever makes most sense along that area. So,
Joe.
So, cash outs for dummies. So if the developer had not cashed out, then all of the property in question here would have been developed to some extent, correct?
correct. So what was cashed out essentially is the curb, gutter, sidewalk, swale, road widening. Actually, in this situation, it has a sidewalk, so that wasn't cashed out. One thing that we do not cash out for actually is the irrigation. Typically, that's most of the time. That is not something that we have them cover the costs on. It just kind of comes out. It doesn't go into that for whatever reason. But you know, so they do pay a lump sum of money that covers those additional pieces. We look at it as opposed to having them do it because, as you can tell by driving around certain areas of the town, you know, there is certain construction that has taken place, you know, for road widening and improvements being completed in different periods of time. So you kind of have, you potentially have essentially curb that kind of curves from one stretch of space to another, or you have other areas where you've got an extra, 30 feet of asphalt right now, and suddenly it narrows down, and you're still only driving on one lane, but it's much wider area. So those are areas where we didn't cash out, where we had the improvements done. We have found that it's ultimately better in the long run to, instead of having short stretches like this one's only, 3 lots long, to have that done as a part of a greater project, so you don't get kind of just a weird improved area that in this type of situation may actually cause traffic issues at that intersection. So if we take the money for it and then do the construction project all as one big project, you get better design, better product, and better outcome in the end, as well as you avoid certain interim issues that you may run into.
So the part I want to get straight is Mr. Shea and the other residents there have an expectation that either the developer is going to do the landscaping, et cetera, curb gutter, or they're going to pay the city and the city's going to do it. So now it looks like the developer has paid the city and the city's not going to do it.
City will do it.
I mean, in a reasonable period of time.
Well, that's the thing, is that in this situation, again, this one's kind of unique as to the location of the sidewalk. In other situations, that sidewalk may have been closer to, say, the fence line. And no, the city still wouldn't have intended to complete the space between the sidewalk and road. That would have been essentially maintained as just extra right-of-way that's more along the lines of a dry grassland type of seeds, as opposed to irrigated.
I'll wait for the update before I go any farther, but
Yeah.
doesn't look very good to me. So,
Well, and one of the problems is too, you've got the property between the sidewalk and the street, and then you've got the property between the sidewalk and the fence. And so I agree, and I know I've talked with Mr. Seal, and they are in fact going to look at policies, procedures to make sure that we address that in the future.
I want to make sure that, I would like this one to be addressed as well.
Yeah. Steve?
Yeah. My question, I guess, Bob, is I know on a new development that the homeowners don't take ownership of the improvements until usually the subdivision is built out. But during the closing period, the developer's collecting HOA fees to maintain that during that time. So is there any responsibility from that developer to give some of those HOA fees back that he collected? Didn't do the landscaping?
That's more or less buried in the CCNRs.
Okay.
Which we do review them just to make sure that kind of our ends are covered, and that may be where this type of stuff comes into the future in terms of like irrigation or maintenance of that area. Because that way it does get included within the HOA. There's an assumption that that would be maintained by the HOA or the adjacent property owner, either one. Right. Because it is between the right-of-way. It is within the right-of-way.
But this is something in the future we can look for if he's collecting those fees that he comes through on his commitments to.
Right, and I don't know whether this one's transferred, has transferred from the developer to the HOA or not yet.
Yeah.
We don't track.
So that's something to look at and see if he's still holding any of your HOA fees.
It's been transferred, okay.
But keep us posted on change of policy and on this one in particular, please.
Yeah, change of policy is definitely something that we'll keep you abreast on. In terms of how we proceed with this one, we may have to come to council to ask for money.
Okay.
And what that looks like.
Thanks, Bob. Next, Mr. Pelissero, did I see you? Mike, would you do me a favor when you come up? Would you please spell your name? I think in our minutes this time we had it wrong. So I noticed that, but
Took me till fifth grade to spell it, so Pelissero.
I think they started with an I-L. So anyway.
That's right, people employ 2 L's, 1 S.
Thanks, Mike.
Just want to share some things, kind of upfront, say I don't know everything behind the scenes, obviously, so what I'm talking about here is just sharing is what I see up front. Recently I was talking to someone within the city and was told that we don't have any type of a business development person to go out and sell Post Falls. We're converting valuable commercial type land into high density housing just so developers can make a fast buck and then leave. We the future residents of the city will be left with the aftermath. The current estimated population of Post Falls is about 40,000. The current estimated population of Coeur d'Alene and Hayden combined is about 74,000, which is not even double our population. We're projected to grow larger than both of them someday. Yet Coeur d'Alene Hayden has 2 Albertsons, 2 Safeways, a Winco, a Super One, a Pilgrims, a Fred Meyer, and a Walmart. Now, Fred Meyer and Walmart are more department-type stores, so they're not technically full-blown grocery stores. We have a Yokes and a Super One and 2 Walmarts. If you have visitors that want to take them out for a nice meal, barring the small mom-and-pop shops and bar-type places, Coeur d'Alene Hayden has Cedars, Anthony's, Red Robin, Red Lobster, Texas Roadhouse, Olive Garden, Cracker Barrel, and I'm sure I'm missing a few. We have, what, a truck stop? Say you want to remodel your kitchen, new tile and appliances. Coeur d'Alene has Lowe's, Home Depot, Fred's. We have nothing other than, I think, a used appliance store. The closest trauma center is either Coeur d'Alene or Spokane. I reviewed the city's comprehensive plan. I see nothing mentioned about needed medical facilities. We should be sitting down together right now with Rathdrum to see how we can address the future need that exists between us and them and start reserving property for it. Point I'm getting at is we are the gateway to this whole area, and we seem to be doing nothing to seize on that opportunity. If our goal is to someday have 100,000 residents that have to commute elsewhere to work, shop, and spend their money, then we're right on track. But if we truly believe in all the stuff in the comprehensive plan, then we need to start looking at how we can attract career-type tax-generating businesses to this city. If you even read the Local Land Use Act definition of like a PUD, it describes a large area where you can work, live, shop, and play, not just to try and get around the zoning laws. I just really ask you start discussing how we can implement that part of the comprehensive plan to attract needed jobs and businesses. I've been all across this country. I've been to the projects in New York, Watts, Compton, many other areas, and I can guarantee that no one started out at the beginning saying, let's build a slum. It all started with great intentions and short-sighted planning. We're heading that way that day too, whether we want to admit it or not. Many of the people coming in here asking us to slow down have seen it firsthand, and they're just trying to stop a repeat of what they've seen. We're not the first city to experience rapid growth, and we need to learn from others. Just as a reminder, kind of a scene, we have elections coming up in 2 weeks, and kind of everywhere in our country right now, we see a total lack of confidence in our government. And just as our election approaches, I really ask that we really look at the fact of our Constitution starts out, we the people. In his Gettysburg Address, President Lincoln quoted the people, of government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It was not of and by for the money, the rich, the developers, or anything else. And I see people coming in and speaking, and just pray when they do that you would just remember that our country is founded on we the people. Thank you.
My quick comment. We do economic development. We do have a policy. We do work with Jobs Plus. They have a different name now, I think, or
Coeur d'Alene EDC.
Coeur d'Alene EDC. We are in frequent contact with businesses, with grocery stores, with restaurants. We are trying to attract that type of business. I agree with majority of your comments on that. So, but I do want you to know we do in fact try to attract those businesses to the area. And a matter of fact, our city administrator and I were talking about that earlier this afternoon. And we will continue that effort. So it's not that we're going out trying to attract the residential and trying to invite more and more people to move here. What we are trying to do is look at the businesses that can come in and provide the services so the people who are here can take advantage and help support those. The other thing, and the gentleman earlier said this too, and I just want to make sure the terminology is correct. It's not our goal to grow to 105. Kootenai Metropolitan Planning Organization has forecast that, but I won't speak for the council. They can nod their heads. It's not my goal that we grow to 105,000, but that is a projected growth. But I want you to understand it's a difference between our goal and what is projected.
Oh, and I understand that. I understand. Like I said, I don't know what exactly behind the scenes of what's going. I just see that, like all that area off Beck Road, all that that development. I mean, we're the gateway in here, and you go to some of the other stores, and you look at how many people are coming from Washington over here shopping, and like the spread out of some pretty major stores, the distance. We are like a perfect place, and I would hate to see us lose that person to say that particular business. To like Liberty Lake because they say, well, let's see here.
We do continue to try to attract those, and we work hard for that. It's not something we take lightly. So, I appreciate your comments, but we do work to that end.
Okay. Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Can I add to that, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
I understand what Mike's saying, and I know that, since I've been on the council, we've created the tech park. We just annexed property along Pleasant View. We've worked with the Point area. I mean, one of the things that we do, set aside land for industrial uses, for manufacturing, for retail, it's not like it's just sitting there waiting for the first guy to show up and say, okay, the first guy shows up, says, I'm gonna build houses or I'm gonna build apartments on it. The land is there. It's just a matter of, getting the people that we would like to come here and have those jobs, come here and do the jobs. But our hands are somewhat tied there.
Yeah, we're not the developers, but we do work on trying to attract that.
Right.
So, Joe.
A minor detail on that too is restaurants, the reason that they're so tough in Post Falls is that there's not enough of the industrial or white collar jobs, that kind of stuff here yet, which we've been trying to attract with the tech park and the new RD along Pleasant View. So if you don't have people working in town, there's not people going to restaurants for lunch. And it's really hard to survive on dinner only. So it's one of those things where hopefully all the things we've been trying to do to attract more, white collar, living wage jobs will then attract more restaurants to serve those people breakfast and lunch as well as dinner too. So the economy is a complex thing.
For probably 20, 25 years, I've heard we need to build more rooftops in order to support the businesses. Well, we built the rooftops. So now the businesses, I understood when they said that 20-some years ago, but I think we have the rooftops now, so hopefully we will get those businesses in. So thanks, Mike. Anybody else? Administrative staff reports. Report on the drinking water system. And Rhiannon, I apologize. I meant to mention that Mike's name was spelt wrong in the minutes, but I forgot, so
No worries.
we can correct him now.
No, I don't want to change the name. All right, good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Craig Bornpool, Utilities Manager for the city, here to speak with you tonight about our water system. Basically, what does it take to operate a water system over the last year? So, kick right in, give you some basics of the system. So we currently have 8 team members within the water division. That's our chief operator. He oversees a crew of 5 other operators. Then we have a utility billing specialist and an operations support specialist. We have 9 active wells. The keen eye will notice from the graphic here that there are only 8. Since this was put into our master plan, we have drilled and brought a new well online. Won't give you many details of that because our projects division manager, Andrew, is going to give further updates on some of the capital projects we've been doing, including that. We have 4 active reservoirs and 119 miles of water line. Well, I'm firing off here. Okay, hold on.
That was short.
Yeah, there we go.
Questions?
There we go.
I got a question.
Well production. What are our wells producing? This is usually what people are most interested in. We keep records on a water year, which goes from October 1st through the end of September. So that water year just ended. And during that water year, we pumped 2.114 billion gallons of water. We have 3 separate pressure zones. So in the main pressure zone, we pumped 1.3 billion gallons, and that's an annual total. If you look at our maximum day, on that maximum day, we were using about 76% of our pumping capacity. So we do have pumping capacity for those peak days, but we're using it. In the north zone, over 500 million gallons, we used about 57% of that peak pumping capacity, and in the west zone, 244 million gallons, about 59% of that peak capacity. So what does that look like? This is the last 5 years, kind of overlapped on itself. You can see, during the winter, early spring, all of our information is showing we're kind of right in line. There isn't a whole lot of peaks there. The bunny ears here was from this year, and if you remember the temperatures during that time frame, you might be thinking of some other pointy protrudences other than bunny ears. It was hot, and so we set new peaks this year, and we set 2 of them. Based on our master plan, which was finished in 2018, they estimated in 2021 our maximum day demand would be 17.6 million gallons. 17.6 million gallons. So occasionally the engineers do get it right.
they were overestimating on our average day demand. And what that tells me is we're really using that capacity during the peak and maybe not growing throughout the rest of the year like they thought we would. So those peaks are really important to us for planning purposes. It's hard to differentiate, but we actually saw this year later in the summer lower pumping totals than even 2020, and I think some of that precipitation later in the summer really helped that out, where in 2020 it was so dry throughout the year. We saw more pumping in the back half of the summer. So paying attention to those peaks, and there was a lot of discussion about water conservation and what was required this year. Just a quick reminder from City Code, irrigation and outside watering prohibited from 12 noon to 6 o'clock, and really the purpose of that is you don't get good irrigation efficiency during that time. You lose a lot of water to evaporation, and it's not as effective. There is a little caveat there. There's allowances if you're working on your sprinkler system, if you have new vegetation that's trying to get seeded. So it's not hard and fast, but generally prohibited between 12 and 6. And then there are requests for limiting irrigation to 3 days a week, depending on your address, odd, even. And so that's not a mandate, but it is a recommendation. It's important to realize, and again, looking at those peaks, future system design takes into account our historic usage patterns. So even if we have plenty of pumping capacity, there's still motivations to ask for restraint and not just pump all that you can, because we're looking at that data as we plan for future improvements and how much pumping capacity we're going to need. And so our system must be designed to meet that peak plus fire flow added on top of that. So the higher that peak is, there's only 1 or 2 days that we might be hitting there, but we need to design a system that can meet that throughout the year. So that's when we talk water conservation, that's one real motivation, not because we're running out of water, because we're trying to efficiently design the system. Other activities within the water division, the team completed over 6,000 work orders. I'll call ourselves lucky, but I attribute this to the pride that our operators have in the system. Of those work orders, there were only 7 repairs on distribution mains or service lines. Those repairs typically require us to shut down a section of the city, and you may see notifications or emails. They go out on Facebook as they're happening. An activity I have listed here is valve exercising is very important, because if we need to shut down a section of line and we go to a valve and it isn't turning, we need to shut down an even larger part of the water system to be able to isolate that. So mainline valve exercising is important. And then 197 residential or commercial check for leaks. Quite often those come about when our utility billing specialist looks at records for the last month on what a connection used. If it looks absorbently higher than the year or 2 years before, she flags that and says, there might be a leak here, let's go out and check it out. And sometimes the customers have no idea. We can isolate that leak, cuts down on their costs, keeps our system efficient. So really good work on those commercial check for leaks. On top of that, they completed 3,636 line locates, so about 10 a day. They are out there locating our underground utilities. We read over 8,000 monthly. We read over 8,000 residential and commercial meters, and we collected 277 water samples. Those water samples are important. We compile those and develop what's called a consumer confidence report. There's a reason you can't read this. I didn't intend it to, because you should have received one. Every connection to the system gets a consumer confidence report. They typically go out with the March-April bill and gives a history of the sampling results that were done, other basic information in that consumer confidence report. And finally, I'll talk about our cross-connection control program. This is where homeowners with irrigation systems need to test their backflow assembly device. Very simply, a backflow is when we have water go back from a service connection into our distribution system. That poses a great risk to the system, especially in that area, so we want to prevent that. So we're pretty, I hesitate to use the word aggressive, but we are pretty aggressive in getting compliance with testing of those assemblies. This year, We had 346 hang tags for noncompliance with that, and ultimately 42 service shutoffs that were required to get the point across. This is important, and we need to get the backflow assemblies tested. We completed 177 tests on city assemblies, and we also assisted with 89 field inspections for other large landscape systems. This time of year, when landscape companies are doing blowouts, it poses a real risk that pressurization, if the backflow assembly is not working properly, it can force some of that irrigation water back into our distribution system. And it's also why when we see the demand go down and this time of year, the higher risk, we go through 30 days of chlorination on the system to further protect it, and, try and prevent any contamination in that system. The numbers here for the hang tags and shutoffs are higher than we've typically seen, and we're reevaluating if we're getting the messaging out in the best way to each user of the purpose of the program and the timelines and everything. So we're hoping that we don't have to have that many in the future, but it is an important program. And I think if you remember, yeah, that was the last slide.
Thanks, Craig. We appreciate, especially on the water conservation part. I think that only makes sense. And I've said this before, but I'm old. But when I was a kid in Coeur d'Alene, we had the even odd days way back when. So that was 55 years ago. So I think it makes sense. So appreciate what you and the whole staff out there do. Al?
A couple of questions, Greg.
Absolutely.
One on the watering, and I know we hear this from time to time. You'll see a commercial property in the middle of the summer and they're watering at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, is there anything that the public can do? Can they come in on our website or email us and say, hey, do these people know they're not supposed to be watering? And what happens in a situation like that?
Typically our operators are out, and if they observe that, we'll try an education first. We do appreciate extra sets of eyes out there as well. So citizens can email the water. It's water division at postfallsidaho.org. That address is maintained and watched. And then Facebook messages or any citizen portal will get routed to us.
Does an old-fashioned phone call work?
Absolutely, yeah.
I want to make sure.
Next question, there's a lot of concern about the aquifer. And especially like this year where the temperatures were so high and people were pumping a lot of water. How do you monitor to tell us that, and I know we heard earlier this year from our water providers, but does your department monitor the aquifer to make sure that it's getting recharged during the course of the year, or?
We are part of a team effort, and there's a couple different groups and entities that we're involved with. One of them is the Idaho-Washington Aquifer Collaborative. And so that is a lot of the water purveyors. We get together once a month. That was pardon the pun, a hot topic this year, was the aquifer level. So we maintain records in some of our wells with transducers that show the depth to groundwater. We are very fortunate with the Rafton Prairie Aquifer and the source that we do have that we are not seeing a strong trending down, that it's being over allocated. Speaking secondhand, one of the other operators where they are converting quite a bit of agricultural land to residential land, they actually see their pumping totals going down. And so it's something that we are watching. There's also the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality. They developed what's called an Aquifer Atlas, and that's in its next generation of development right now, which will be pretty comprehensive in evaluating both the quality and quantity of that aquifer water.
So the short answer is we're not running out of water anytime soon. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. Good information. Mayor and council comments. Tonight, I have none. How about council? No? And we do need an executive session.
We do.
How long?
15 minutes.
Move to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code 74-2061F to communicate with legal counsel for a public agency, discuss the legal ramifications of and legal options for pending litigation or controversies not yet being litigated but imminently likely to be litigated. The mere presence of legal counsel at an executive session does not satisfy this requirement. That we will be there for 20 minutes, and furthermore, that no action will be taken.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Anthony?
Aye.
Wilhelm?
Aye.
Malloy?
Aye.
Wolf?
Aye.
Motion passed. We'll enter executive. Call the meeting back to order. Are there any motions to come forth?
Move to adjourn?
All those,
Second.
second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.